Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we've got a really fascinating stack of sources in front of us, all about one of the most, well, profound and honestly radical spiritual paths out there, Sufism.
Or tasawwuf, as it's known.
Right, tasawwuf. And this material is just extraordinary.
It really is. It's not just a definition, it's a blueprint. So for you, the listener who shared these with us, our mission here is to go way beyond the surface.
Yeah, we need to unpack the foundational goals, which are almost alarming, understand the incredible discipline it takes.
And crucially, define its actual historical relationship with Islamic law, the Sharia.
Absolutely. Because when you just zoom out, the simplest way to put it is that Sufism is the path to the ultimate truth.
Which is God in this context.
Yeah.
And that search right away splits into two. The sources are very clear about this.
You've got the theory, the philosophy.
The science of Sufism, you could call it. And then you have the practical side, the day-to-day spiritual work.
That's what they mean by being a dervish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the striving.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when we dig into that ultimate goal, it goes so far beyond what most of us think of as, religion. The goal is described as the annihilation of your ego, your will, your entire self by God.
And that word is so important. Annihilation, or fauna, is the absolute peak of the journey.
Yeah.
But, and this is the critical part, the sources stress, it's not the end.
Wait, I have to stop you. Annihilation sounds like the end. It sounds like losing your identity, like nothingness. How is it an attractive goal?
I mean, it sounds terrifying,
Right.
but it's not nihilistic at all. It's the ultimate transformation. It leads to a state called baka,
Which is?
permanence, or subsistence with God.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Your old selfish self is erased, but then you're spiritually revived with the light of his essence, the dat.
So you don't disappear.
No, you're rebuilt. Your will is now perfectly aligned with the divine will. You start to see and act purely through God's knowledge and love. Your identity isn't gone, it's perfected.
That makes what the early masters said so much clearer. Like Junaid al-Baghdadi, he defined it as exactly that, a two-step process.
Self-annihilation in God, and then permanence with God.
And then Shibli comes along and gives us the practical application.
Right, he says it's about always being in God's presence. But the really shocking part of his definition is that your focus has to be so total that no other goal matters.
Not even paradise.
Not even the goal of reaching paradise. That just shows you the level of dedication we're talking about.
So it's a constant battle then, moment by moment. Abu Muhammad Jarir basically defined it as this continuous struggle against what he called the
Nafsul amara.
the evil commanding soul.
Yeah, your basest instincts. So if we were to pull all that together for you, Sufism is this path of shedding your human weaknesses to take on angelic qualities. You're trying to live constantly aware of God's knowledge and love.
And trying to see behind the surface of things.
Exactly. Every event becomes a window through which you see him.
A loss isn't just a loss, it's divine wisdom. And injustice isn't just an injustice, it's a test of your own soul.
Precisely. And that awareness that you are constantly being seen, it transforms everything, not just what you do, but your whole reality.
This sounds impossibly difficult, a spiritual boot camp. So how do they actually do it? I mean, the sources stress that this is not a path for, being lazy or casual.
Not at all. It's incredibly structured. And this is where we have to tackle a huge modern misconception.
That it's somehow separate from the law.
Or even against it. That because it's mystical, it bypasses the Sharia. The sources say absolutely not. In fact, you can't even start the path without absolute adherence to Islamic law.
Even the smallest, most trivial rules.
Even the most trivial. Because the outer action is the container for the inner meaning. You can't get to the kernel of truth without respecting the shell of the law. They can't be separated.
What's fascinating here is the sources use this analogy of a honeybee.
The honeybee analogy is so powerful. It's not just about working hard. It's about purified work.
Constantly striving.
Right? Like a honeybee flying tirelessly, not for itself, but to acquire knowledge of God. It's about purifying the heart from everything else. It's purposeful, it's constant, and it's productive.
And that striving follows a very clear instruction set. We can actually lay out the core principles for you. First, you have to reach a true belief in God's absolute oneness.
Second, you have to listen to the divine speech, the Quran, and also obey the laws of creation itself. You see the physical world as a signpost.
third, and I love this, you must overflow with divine love, seeing the whole world as a cradle of brotherhood and sisterhood.
Which makes it deeply compassionate. Fourth,
Mm.
you have to prioritize others. Their well-being comes before your own.
And fifth, it all comes back to acting on the divine will, not your own.
Which is that self-annihilation we started with. The whole process is about developing your angelic dimension.
So if that's the goal, where's the first step? The sources talk about yakwaza, wakefulness.
This is such a profound idea. It's captured in that famous saying, men are asleep, they wake up when they die.
Yeah.
Wakefulness is realizing that this material world is just a dream. It's temporary. So the traveler has to wake up now to the reality of the next world. It's like snapping out of a trance.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this connects the inner life to actual history.
Mm-hmm.
When Islam was first spreading, the focus was all on codifying the rules, right? The Sharia, the traditions.
Exactly. You had the legal scholars, the jurists, handling the outer dimension, how to pray, how to do business, all the community stuff.
But at the same time, the Sufi masters were focused on the pure spiritual dimension, the inner truth.
They were using asceticism, spirituality, self-purification, all to get to the essence of what all that law was actually for.
And that just sounds like a setup for a massive fight. You've got one group on the letter of the law, another on the spirit.
And it created this huge tension, this idea that you had to choose between the two. Exotericism versus esotericism.
It was a false choice.
A deeply damaging one. The jurists thought the Sufis were lawless, and the Sufis thought the jurists were, just dry and heartless.
So how do you fix that? How do you get two groups who speak different spiritual languages to see they're on the same team?
Well, the sources give us this brilliant analogy. They say that jurisprudence and Sufism are like the two colleges of a single university.
Okay.
And this university teaches the Sharia. The College of Law teaches you how to do the acts, the posture, the words, the timing.
Mechanics.
The mechanics. But the College of Sufism teaches you what those actions really mean. The sincerity, the presence, the intention. It teaches you how to become al-insanul kamil, the perfected human being.
You can't graduate without passing both courses.
You can't. And the person who basically built the bridge between these two colleges was Imam al-Ghazali.
A towering figure.
Oh, absolutely. And what's key is that he was an expert in both. He was a master of law and philosophy first. He taught at the law college.
And then he had his own spiritual crisis.
A profound one. He left everything behind and walked the Sufi path himself for years. So he wasn't an outsider criticizing. He had lived it.
He had standing in both worlds.
Exactly. And he brought all of that into his masterpiece, The Revival of the Religious Sciences. In it, he rigorously reviewed and organized Sufism. He put it on solid ground.
He made the inner life as academically serious as the outer law.
That's it. He united them. After al-Ghazali, the heart and the mind were meant to work together. And that shaped Islamic education for 1,000 years.
That's immense. Okay, so now that we get the path and its history, let's look at how Sufis see the people on it and the people who aren't.
Right. So among the travelers themselves, there are two main approaches. The first group travels on the wings of knowledge, or marifa.
Knowledge.
They rely on the certainty that there is no power and strength save with God. The sources say this is generally the safer path.
And the other path, the riskier one.
That's the path of yearning and ecstasy. These travelers can sometimes get distracted.
Distracted by what?
By the spiritual experiences themselves. By wonder-working or hidden truths, instead of focusing only on the source of those experiences, on God.
Okay. And then, zooming out even further, they divide all of humanity into three groups. The first is the perfected ones.
These are the prophets and the saints who have already reached the destination. But interestingly, the sources say some of them are so drowned in the ocean of meeting God
Wow.
that they can't even guide others anymore. They've gone too deep.
Then you have the second group, the initiates, the ones on the path.
And they're split. You have those who seek only God, renouncing everything else, and then those who seek paradise but still, take permitted worldly pleasures.
And the final group, this one feels very modern, the settlers or clingers.
They call them clingers because they cling heavily to the earth. These are people who just want an easy, comfortable material life. They're described as being spiritually blind and deaf.
That category of clingers really hits home today, doesn't it? It's a spiritual critique of materialism.
It is. But the framework is diagnostic, not judgmental. The goal is always to find a spark in the clinger and begin that process of awakening we talked about. It's about spiritual immaturity, not condemnation.
Which brings us back to where we started. This is a path of extreme rigor, demanding self-annihilation and total obedience to both the inner and outer law.
And that's the key takeaway for you to hold on to. Sufism is fundamentally different from a lot of what we think of as mysticism or yoga or even philosophy,
Why? What's the dividing line?
because it demands invocation, regular worship, complete obedience to God, and above all, humility. If you try to purify yourself just through your own intellect, you might end up arrogant.
Right, you'd feel like you achieved it.
Exactly. But when purification is rooted in total submission to God, the only possible result is profound humility. That submission changes everything.
So you now have a framework for understanding Sufism, not as some, historical curiosity, but as a systematic science of the inner life rooted right in the core of Islam.
A science that requires absolute surrender.
So what does this all mean? Well, consider this as a final thought to take with you. The first person to formally be called a Sufi was Abu Hashim al-Kufi, who died around the year 150 after Hijra.
That's only a few generations after the Prophet's own companion.
Right. So given the incredible rigor of this path we've just discussed, the self-annihilation, the absolute inner purity, just reflect on how quickly the need for a distinct science of the inner life arose, separate from the science of the outer law.
It tells you a lot.
It tells you so much about the immediate and enduring tension between just following the rules and the deep human struggle for true spiritual realization, a struggle that started right at the beginning of Islamic history.
A profound